every football game you've ever watched has started with a kickoff, it is still one of the most misenforced and heavily penalized plays in the game. I'm Mike with NKOA, and today we're going to cover free kicks. To truly understand the rules related to the kicking game, you got to start with the fundamentals.
We're going back to work on fundamentals.
Fundamentals? In the middle of the season?
That means going back, reading the definition of a kick, kicking, a catch, and a recover. They're all very important to the way you enforce these rules. Let's start with a kick. A kick is a noun for the status of the ball. A kick starts when the ball is legally kicked and doesn't end until the ball becomes dead, there's a catch, or it is recovered. Kicking is intentionally striking the ball with your knee, lower leg, or foot. Now the definition of a catch. To make a catch, a player must gain possession of the ball before it touches the ground and come down in bounds with possession to maintain a catch. Now the definition of recover. Recovering the ball is the same as catching it, just after it's already touched the ground. I know, those definitions seem very basic, but this game starts in Rule 2, and you cannot progress until you're very clear on the definitions. Especially with kicks. When enforcing a penalty on a kickoff, you have to know, did it happen before or after a catch? Because everything changes depending on the timing of the foul or when a catch was made or was not made. Now there are three types of kicking methods. You can either be a punt, a place kick, or a drop kick. And there are two types of kicks, scrimmage kicks or free kicks. In this video, we're going to cover free kicks, specifically a kickoff. So we'll start with the most common type of free kick, which is the kickoff that begins every single game and occurs after every single score. What's critical is let's start with where you line up on the field.
First, let's look at five-person mechanics. Regardless of 5, 7, onside, or not, the referee is always on the goal line. For five-person mechanics, the umpire is going to start on the 20, opposite of the chains. The line judge will always start on the 50, opposite of the chains. The head linesman is going to start chain side at the 30, and the back judge is going to start at the 40. Now that assumes the free kicking line is the 40, and then for K and for R, it's the 50. So let's talk about as soon as the ball is kicked. When the ball is kicked, immediately L is going to move to the 40, and the back judge is going to loop behind K into the middle of the field between the numbers and the hash. However, if it's in a situation where highly likely that we're going to see an onside kick, then the U is going to jump the line judge and line up on the 40. The back judge is going to stay on the 40, and the head linesman is going to move up to the 50. In this scenario, then B is responsible for K encroaching on the onside kick, while U is also responsible for that, as well as trying to pick up if K initiates a block before either R engages or the balls went 10 yards and touched the ground. H and L are responsible for the same things, but mostly trying to figure out who gets the ball. The only thing that changes for seven-person mechanics is your short wings are going to stay on the goal line after a score, and your deep wings are going to start at the 50. The back judge is going to stay on the 40, but they're going to move to opposite of chain side, and the umpire is going to be on the chain side. Now let's talk about seven-person mechanics on an onside kick. In this scenario, the short wings, instead of being on the goal line, they'll go up and be on the 45. Now, in this scenario, B and U are responsible for K encroaching. H and L is responsible for K initiating a block or first touching before the ball goes 10 yards and touches the ground. And then the deep wings, the field judge and the side judge, are going to be responsible for who recovered or kick-catch interference. R remains on the goal line. Okay, so let's take an example of what we're talking about here on the kick moving to the 40. So the line judge in this five-person mechanic is going to be lined up here on the 50. And what you want to see is after the kick is made, you want to see a quick shuffle or turn and run while keeping your head on the players. But the point is, get into position so the play comes to you and you're not too far away. So here we're taking a few steps. What we really want to do is we want to hustle to the 40. And as the play develops, you'll see at the 40 you would be in perfect position. You would be about 10 yards away, 10 to 15 yards away from the blocker to pick up the run as it passes you. So let's just kind of watch. If we would be at the 40, now we're almost 25 yards away from the tackle. I get there's an official there, but you really want to move into position and be closer and provide some more help. The other thing we want to call out this year that we want to make sure we're doing is when the play's over, let's slow down. Right here, we've turned around, and the player has been on the ground for less than a full second. We're turning around looking for the ball. Especially on kicks and any other play, let's take our time and focus on the effort, because as soon as you turn, anything can happen. And based on where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to be looking at, or activity around the pile, this is your job to catch. So we want to do a better job this year of everybody just slowing down, wait, and the ball will come to you.
The difference for 7-person mechanics is the short wings are going to start on the goal line. That way you're there to rule on if the ball crossed into the end zone for a touchback or out of bounds for a free kick out of bounds. However, if the ball's kicked to the opposite side of the field as you, don't wait for that ball to be caught to start moving upfield and catching blockers. One key to note when getting into position, be it 5-man or 7-man mechanics, let's not get in the habit of running down the middle of the field if you're the back judge or the line judge to get in position. Let's go to the outside of the sidelines, move up the sideline, and follow the mechanic. No one's here to see us running down the middle of the field. The second piece of advice that I'll give you is prior to a kick, we've had time to count the players, advise coaches if they've got too many, too little. It's good preventative officiating. You also want to make sure the players are aware on the kicking team they cannot be more than 5 yards off the ball. So that means in the case where we start on the 40, their foot cannot be touching the 35. Before you give the ready for play signal, let's make sure everybody's where they're supposed to be so we don't have to stop the game for something silly.
Okay, here's an example of what we need to be doing better in what we call preventative officiating. Prior to the kick, K has to have 4 players on either side of the ball prior to the ready for play. In addition to that, no player of K other than the kicker can be more than 5 yards off the free kick line, which in this case is the 40. So all of these players here at the bottom that are behind the 35-yard line, we need to move them up prior to letting this kick take off. Because the rule states the only person that's allowed to be more than 5 yards off the ball is the kicker, and they have to be the one that kicks the ball.
Before we get started covering the actual kick, just know that no matter what happens, K can never, ever advance the kick. They can advance a fumble that occurs after the kick. Remember, the kick is the status of the ball, which ends after it's recovered, caught, or becomes dead by rule. But they can never, ever advance a kick. Now that we've got everybody lined up and where they're supposed to be, let's talk about the 2 things you got to watch for prior to the ball actually being kicked. One is encroachment by the kicking team. This is when a player gets a little overzealous and he beats the kicker from that line. Now in high school, there's no chance to tack that on, so let's make sure if a foot's down, let's shut it down. Otherwise, let's give some grace.
Okay, here's an example of what we're talking about. When the foot's down, shut it down. We don't want to major in the minors and get them if their head's across the line, but if they get a full step, that's the line we're going to draw in the sand. Here's what we're talking about. So as the kicker's coming in, he gives a little stutter step, throws this guy off bounds, boom, he's got a full foot down, and you can't see the ball in that frame. However, if I hit this button here, now you see the ball comes out. He already had a full step, and that's an example of when we want to shut down. Look how far ahead of all of his players he is.
The second thing to watch for is a pop-up kick. This rule's been in place for a while now, so you probably won't see it, but you want to make sure you're aware of the rule. This is when the ball is struck immediately into the ground, pops it really high, so the player's standing there waiting on it, but they don't have fair catch protection because the ball's already hit the ground. So you got to make sure you shut that down immediately. It's a dead ball foul. Now that the ball's away, you need to know when the clock starts. On free kicks, the clock starts as soon as R touches the ball. What we don't want is every official signaling that the clock can start, because that means we've got 5 or 7 sets of eyes on the ball when we should only at most have 1 or 2. So if the ball's not on your side of the field when it's caught, you don't need to wind the ready for play. Next, let's talk about first touching. This is when K touches the ball prior to R. It can happen more than one time on a play, but what you need to make sure you're aware of is how far has the ball traveled prior to K touching it. After the ball's kicked, it must travel 10 yards and come in contact with the ground before K is allowed to touch it. However, If they do touch it before it travels the required 10 yards, this is not a foul. Do not drop the flag. It is simply a beanbag to mark the sign of first touching, because that'll come in handy when R makes their choice on the inbound spot. One key thing to note, first touching is ignored if R blocks K into the ball. Kicks in high school football, as soon as the ball crosses the goal line, it's automatically dead for a touchback.
Okay, here's an example of what we're talking about. As soon as that ball crosses the plane of the goal line, we're going to shut it down. It doesn't have to make contact with the ground. It doesn't have to be in player possession. A player, if they muff it and it goes in the end zone, it doesn't matter. As soon as that ball crosses that goal line, we're going to shut it down. This is why the referee lines up on the goal line, is to make this specific call. Right there, right where they need to be, and we shut it down. And then notice the wing officials at the top, they immediately start to crash in. We want both wings to crash in and just stay on the whistle and make sure everybody knows this play is dead so we don't get anybody hurt. Okay, on this play is an example I was talking about previously. As soon as the ball is muffed into the end zone, we're still going to shut it down on a touchback. So what you have here is ball's kicked, player fields it about the 2, drops it, goes into the end zone. Referee does a good job getting in front of him there. And then, this official down here at the bottom is also going to come into the field just like this. Everybody's standing on the whistle, and what we want to make sure is everybody's getting out there and everyone's aware that the play is shut down.
Let's break this next section down into what K can do during a kick and what they cannot do during a kick. For free kicks, as soon as the ball's traveled 10 yards and has come in contact with the ground, K has the right to touch, recover, and retain possession of that football. However, prior to that ball traveling the required 10 yards or coming in contact with the ground, K is not allowed to initiate a block with R until they've initiated a block or until R has touched the ball. When the ball's kicked, R has a right to catch the ball, and they cannot be impeded by K in any way. Even if K is standing perfectly still and R runs into them, it is a foul for kick-catch interference. It's K's responsibility to not impede R's progress to the ball.
Okay, one thing I wanted to call out after looking at this video that I forgot to mention is in NFHS rules, there is no halo rule. However, we want to make sure that R has an unhindered opportunity to catch the ball. So their movement isn't restricted, there's no contact, there's no interference in any way for them to move to catch the ball. So there's no halo rule, but the rule clearly states you can't impede their movement one direction or the other.
If K kicks the ball out of bounds without being touched by R, then we have a foul, which has 4 types of penalty enforcement. The first of which is a 5-yard penalty and re-kick, or 2, to put it on the hash marks closest to the sideline where it went out of bounds at the inbound spot, which is 25 yards from the free kick line. This is most commonly the 35. Or 3, put the ball in play after assessing a 5-yard penalty. This is for when the ball goes out of bounds in between the 35 and the 40, if we started from the 40. That gives you the ability to tack on 5 from where it went out of bounds. Or 4, decline the penalty and take the ball at the inbound spot.
Now that we've talked about the 4 choices that R will have on a free kick out of bounds, let's look at 2 scenarios here to make sure you know effectively how to communicate to the coach what the main choices are going to be. So in this scenario, let's say the free kick goes out of bounds somewhere east of the 31-yard line. So in this case, it's going out at the 31. The choices would be to back it up 5 yards and re-kick, take the ball at the 31, take the ball at the 35, which would be 25 yards from the free kick line, or add 5 yards to where it went out of bounds, which was the 31, and would place the ball at the 36-yard line. So the key here is anything in this image to the right of the 31 or towards the kicking line, you're going to add 5. So the choice would be, coach, do you want to take it back 5 and re-kick, or do you want to take the ball at the 36? And the note here is it'll go on the hash mark closest to the sideline where it went out of bounds. Do not put the ball in the middle of the field. Another scenario is if the ball goes out of bounds west of the 31 in this image. The choices in this case would be 5 and re-kick, take the ball wherever it went out of bounds, or to take the ball at the 35-yard line, which is 25 yards from the free kick line, or add 5 for whatever reason to where it went out of bounds. In this case, clearly you would take the ball at the 35 or re-kick.
One thing to note that you have seen on TV or potentially in a game around town is when a free kick touches a player of R who is out of bounds, the ball becomes dead and you have a penalty for a free kick out of bounds. However, based on the rules, no player shall intentionally go out of bounds, reach back inbounds, and touch a ball that is inbounds to make it a free kick out of bounds.
Here's an example of what we're talking about. This is probably the most recent and most famous instance from the NFL, and the key to note here is it's not the same in high school football. It explicitly calls out that no player will intentionally go out of bounds and then come back or directly impact the play. And so this play here would be an example of, and I've seen people try it in high school thinking that the same rule applies. If a player intentionally goes out of bounds, they cannot come back and influence the play whatsoever.
For kickoffs, after the kick ends and the running play begins, that now you start to enforce everything following the all but one principle. Now let's cover the free kick after a safety. All of the rules for kickoff apply with one or two exceptions. The first exception being the free kick line is the 20-yard line, okay, and for R, the 30-yard line. The additional exception is it doesn't have to be a place kick, so this gives them the opportunity to punt or free kick. Next thing we're going to cover is the awarded fair catch free kick. So every team, after a fair catch or an awarded fair catch, which occurs during a kick-catch interference, R has the choice for an awarded fair catch free kick. I've never seen this done. You hear of it, but think of the scenario where it's late in the game, there's a punt, it's a very short punt. The R recovers it, they've got a really good field goal kicker, they can elect for a free kick, an awarded fair catch free kick, put the ball down and try to place kick it through the uprights.
Okay, now that we've covered all the rules, let's look at a few plays here and really what are we looking for while we're officiating. So on this play we're going to have a kick that's near the sideline. It's going to be first touched by R, so this negates all first touching by K. I want to bring attention to, as the play goes near the sideline, it's loose. We've got officials in position, right? So we've got two officials right where they need to be. We're looking here, right down the sideline. So I can't debate this call, but what I do want to bring notice to is if K touches that sideline prior to actually recovering that ball, the ball is dead. It's not a foul for free kick out of bounds, but the ball is dead because it has contacted a player out of bounds. So let's roll that back a little bit. So as the ball's kicked, it's going to bounce off of R, and then the ball's loose, and you can see there, boom, he comes into contact with that sideline. But I can't debate it. The official's right where he needs to be. Might live a little longer on this one, though. So this is the same play from a different angle. But the one thing I will call out is look at the sidelines where the official has to work here. So prior to the kick, you want to take a step all the way back to the edge of that restricted area so that all the players are way behind that line and giving you plenty of room to work. Because as you can see, as this ball gets close to the sideline, the official down here at the bottom is going to have to deal with all of these players that are in the way here. I mean, you're talking players here, all around through here. You want to make sure those people are back so that this call, you're not worried about the coach or a player running right in front of you as you're trying to make this play. The next thing we want to talk about is, as especially wing officials or any official covering a kick, is we should have no more than one set of eyes on the ball. The rest of us should be trying to pick up the receiving team's blockers and keep an eye on in front of the ball because that's where the action is going to be. The guy with the ball can only fall down. So this is an example where unfortunately we missed, but it's something we've got to pick up. So as we look at the block getting set up here, you'll see him coming to screen. He is head hunting this guy. He's got his head down. You can see him kind of running with that brick. And then he just takes out the player from the side there. It's a blindside block. You got to get your hands out on that. It wasn't a block in the back, however, it certainly is what we're looking for on a blindside block. So this is a great example of the official down here at the bottom being in front, picking up blockers in front of the play, not watching the ball, and really seeing the whole thing. So you can see right here the players we got highlighted. You got a clear hook, turn, and takedown. That's a classic hold, but the official stays with it, then continues to officiate the play and gets the fumble out of bounds. Nice job. On this play, this is another example of why you need to see the whole thing, because sometimes a train wreck doesn't necessarily mean there's a foul. But as officials, we got to continue to try not to watch the ball and then make sure that what we do is see the whole thing. You'll see this player here, he really doesn't even see him. He turns runs and takes himself out as well as his fellow teammate.
All right, sports fans, that does it for this week's video on free kicks. We'll cover punts, PATs, and field goals in a later video. But if you like this video, make sure you let us know by giving the like button the business below.
Personal foul. I'll pick this up. On number 99 of the defense, after he tackled the quarterback, he's giving them business down there.
And if you want to be notified as soon as we post another video like this, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and you hit that bell for notifications. Until then, stay healthy, get in the rule book, and we'll see you next time.